let's ask some questions. Was COVID-19 engineered in a Chinese lab? Did a secretive accident lead to the deaths of millions? Was the global scientific and medical establishment complicit in the largest, costliest, deadliest cover-up in world history? The answer is, and we are not happy about this, maybe, perhaps. What we are about to present to you is the facts. What we know right now about COVID-19's origin is a hot topic, and what we don't know. And you can decide. Here is what we know. COVID is without question the most damaging man-made disaster in modern history. This virus has killed 3.5 million people and counting. That is the population of Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Baltimore combined. It is in the interest of American national security to know how this happened, why this happened. The questions we are asking on this show is simple. Where did the virus come from? Answering questions like this clear-eyed and honestly is the only way we will prevent the next pandemic. So here's what we know definitively. The spread of COVID-19 originated in the Chinese city of Wuhan. The genome sequence of the COVID virus is of bat origin and specific to a species of bat known as the horseshoe bat. The horseshoe bats are not native to this city and live hundreds of miles away. Horseshoe bats were brought into Wuhan regularly by a research laboratory called the Wuhan Institute of Virology. These researchers studied bat coronaviruses and their transmission to human beings, among other animals. The most famous researcher at this lab was named Shi Zhenli, who specialized in bat coronaviruses and their cross-species transmission. COVID-19 is particularly deadly due to its spike protein. The spike proteins are the key to COVID unlocking human cells and making it genetically optimal for human-to-human transmission. This is what makes COVID so deadly. Shi Zhenli's lab had sophisticated capacities to synthesize viruses for cross-species transmission using the spike protein. She published papers on it. You can read them. She gave speeches on it. You can watch them. The first known cases of COVID-19 were lab workers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, according to U.S. intelligence and the Wall Street Journal. In 2018, U.S. scientific diplomats who visited the Wuhan lab were so horrified at the sloppiness, carelessness, lack of safety at this lab that they wrote a series of urgent diplomatic cables warning of a potential and imminent lab outbreak. The cables specifically noted the dangerous research on bat coronaviruses and their human transmission. The person the U.S. scientific diplomats were the most worried about was researcher Shi Zhenli. Echoing these fears was an independent Chinese researcher, Zhao Boutao, from South China University of Technology. Boutao wrote a paper titled The Possible Origins of the 2019 Coronavirus, where he noted that scientists in the Wuhan lab have a history of being attacked by the bats they were studying, splattered with bat blood and urine, and infected with bat coronaviruses. Boutao concludes his report by stating, the killer coronavirus probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan. Safety levels need to be reinforced, and regulations should be taken to relocate these laboratories far away from city centers. By the way, I want to emphasize here, this is a researcher from China, a man who was on the ground at ground zero during the outbreak, who did exhaustive research. After this outbreak, the Chinese government cracked down on the Wuhan lab. Researchers disappeared. Websites were scrubbed. Whistleblowers were silenced. Early samples of the virus have been destroyed. Laboratories that worked on them shuttered. Doctors and journalists who reported on the spread have vanished. The Communist Party installed, and this is real, the top military biochemical weapons expert to oversee the operations of the Wuhan lab in China. The government of China has yet to allow an international investigation into the virus origins to proceed, an honest investigation. That is what we know. Those are all real data points. You can look them up yourself. These are facts. That is what we know now. This shocking preponderance of evidence is perhaps why many in our scientific, medical, and political establishment are suddenly taking the lab leak theory seriously. Some of us took it seriously a year ago. Everyone from Dr. Fauci to CNN is now validating the lab leak theory as the most probable cause of the COVID pandemic. So why are we only hearing about this consensus now? Because the question was politicized. Trump endorsed the lab leak theory, so corporate, political, and scientific establishments reflexively took the opposite position. They would rather oppose Trump than have you know the truth, even if it costs you your life. Check out these headlines from corporate media at the beginning of last year, calling the lab leak theory debunked. Pure partisan propaganda bile. We read these articles, every single one of them, every article on screen we read. Not a single one of them debunked the lab leak theory. Every single one of them simply reported that some scientists, who undoubtedly held the same political views as the reporter, said the lab leak theory was not likely in their opinion. Debunking something is providing evidence that a claim is false. It's not providing an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Dr. Fauci, who has way too many opinions these days, it's getting him in trouble, is quoted in many of these articles. I wonder how many of these reporters would have been calling Dr. Fauci had they known then that he approved funding for the Wuhan lab from the NIH. The Wuhan lab being, of course, the most likely source of the COVID-19 outbreak. If our press were honest throughout this pandemic, would Dr. Fauci be on TV today or in a holding room awaiting trial? The trial in the Senate and the trial in our Congress for Dr. Fauci is just beginning. Oh, and it gets better. At the height of the COVID outbreak, Slate.com, always trusty for communist mouthpiece propaganda, had the temerity to call questions about the Wuhan lab, you guessed it, racist. That's right. This is an exact quote from Slate. Rumors of the lab escape or a bioweapon stem from good old-fashioned racism. They did this while people in your community died. They insult you and dishonor the dead. It's grotesque. The most tragic part of this saga is that none of these questions are political by nature. When you politically supercharge a question like, where did COVID come from, it guarantees that you will corrupt the answer and that your answer will ultimately be wrong. That's exactly what happened here. They would rather you die than Donald Trump be right. Never again trust these people. Your life might depend on it.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.